Hi, my name is Madeline Zeppa, and today I am going to be telling you a little bit about everything of the key points I've learned through my psychology lifespan and development course. I'm going to start off by just a simple definition of the human growth and development, which is the physical and cognitive growth of a human from conception all the way until death in the afterlife. So the physical side of that would be like whenever you're a baby and you're growing and growing and growing, and your legs are getting longer and your arms are getting longer, and you're physically just growing. And then the cognitive and emotional and the mental and spiritual side of things is like your thoughts developing, being able to process more complex ideas, creating a form of self-identity, those things as well. So I'm going to go through the different life stages and talk about each of those in a tiny blurb about them. So the first stage in the lifespan of humans is conception and prenatal development. This stage, the fetus is growing in the womb and developing physically into a human that can just survive outside of the womb. The next stage is birth and a newborn child. This stage, the baby's born. It's the process of birth, and it's pretty crucial 90 days for if the infant is going to survive. The neonates are super fragile and they're facing many challenges that they've never had to in the outside world. So this is pretty crucial stage. So next is infancy. This is when major physical changes occur in growth and height. There's also a lot of brain development that occurs in this stage, while also beginning the foundation of creating motor skills to help later on in life. Toddlerhood is the next life stage, where all of these motor skills are really sharpened and fine-tuned. And they can do things like walking and running and like really understanding what it is to play with toys. They can also speak words in some ways that they can communicate in just like little short, like one word lines. Early childhood comes next, and it's the more cognitive growth than physical. This is when they learn so much about themselves and others and how interactions work. Next is middle childhood, and physical growth is still slow and steady, but there is insanely increased gross motor skills. Cognitively, in middle childhood, children can differentiate between useful versus irrelevant knowledge and have grown their language skills immensely. Next is adolescence. This is where puberty happens, so there's a lot of changes in the hormones. This is where males and females take on their more traditional type characteristics. And friends are a huge part of this phase. They value friendships really over most things. This is also the first stage where things like religion and morality really start to come into play, for sure. So next we have emerging adulthood. This is after adolescence, and this is a life stage people are typically making really big dreams about their future, and they're making really big decisions about what they want their life to look like career-wise, where they may want to plant roots and live, who they may want to spend the rest of their life with in marriage, where they want to attend universities. So these choices that you make in emerging adulthood really extend on to the rest of your life. Next, we have young adulthood, where humans are really healthy physically. They typically get in some good exercise. They're starting out in their career and their life. Then we have middle adulthood. This is whenever things can start to decline health-wise. Like menopause can happen, vision can start decreasing a bit, but this is also when grandchildren can be coming into the picture. They have a little more expertise on career, and late adulthood is our final life stage really, and this is when the physical aging is very apparent, but there tends to be an overwhelming peace in life. There's a lot of reflection on life, and people kind of come to terms with what their life has looked like. And then lastly, there is the death and afterlife, which this is where culture and religion really play a heavy role. So next I'm going to talk a little bit about some different theories that some different people in history have had about the development of life. So we have Sigmund Freud, who has the psychosexual theory of human development, and he pretty much says that this theory is based off the fact that sexual desire is the driving force behind human development, and there's different stages. Like when you're a baby, it's oral, like sucking on things and chewing on things, and then as you go through the life stages, they change with each stage. We have Erik Erikson, who has this psychosocial theory, which says the driving force behind development was the need to become integrated into the social and cultural environment. So there's a lot of different phases with this too, like trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt, identity versus identity confusion, intimacy versus isolation, generativity versus stagnation, and ego integrity versus despair. We have John Piaget with his theory of cognitive development, focused on how cognitive abilities change with age and stage sequence of development. So we have the sensory motor stage, the pre-operational, where they're capable of language and limited mental operations, and then the concrete operations phase, capable of using mental operations only in concrete immediate experience. And then the formal operations, where they can think logically and abstractly, being able to test hypotheses and have complex thoughts. All stages are similar in the way that they block off between ages, but they all have different driving forces of the real reason why development occurs. So the way that we have found all these great things out about how people develop physically, cognitively, and compared across cultures is through research. And research is basically just the systematic studies and finding new information, and it is important in human development because it allows us to not only understand ourselves as humans, but how to properly raise up the next generation, how to understand each other better. A big role that goes into research and doing these studies is the scientific method. There's 5 steps to this. We have identify a question, first of all, to be investigated. Then you have to form a hypothesis. You have to choose research measurement and design, collect data and test your hypothesis, and then draw your conclusions and essentially share with the world what conclusions you came to. I'm gonna start kind of at the beginning and work my way through life now, going into a little bit more detail on things. So we have prenatal development, which starts at conception when the sperm and the ovum unite and they form a zygote. The zygote then it has to attach to the uterus lining to develop. In the first trimester, that's for weeks 1 through 12, the zygote implants in the uterus, and things like the umbilical cord, the amnion, and placenta start to form and attach. The heart begins beating. All of the major organs are starting to be formed, and you can start to hear heartbeat. The second trimester is 13 to 24 weeks. The mother can feel movement while the fetus kicks. The third trimester is 25 to 38 weeks, where the lungs are now fully developed and birth is going to happen soon. The birthing process has 3 stages. So we have labor. This is whenever you will start dilating and contractions will begin. Delivery of the baby. And then stage 3 is expelling of the placenta and the umbilical cord. Once the baby's born, there are some circumstances where they might have a low birth weight. Some of the consequences of a low birth weight mean that they're really high risk because they don't have full lung development. A big thing that hospitals do in this situation is kangaroo care, where you can do skin to skin with the baby, and this has shown great success. Now I'm going to jump into a little bit more later on in childhood, what brain development looks like for children, all the way from the prenatal to childhood. So in the prenatal development, it's more like everything's forming, it's growing, it's connecting. You're actually born with an insane amount of neurons. And then in infancy, it's whenever the brain is sort of divided and it's learning its different roles in the different sections, and synapses are starting to happen. So these synapses are connections of the different neurons that really make them functional. As a toddler, these connections become crazy and multiply, and they're going so crazy and it's happening so fast that a pruning process happens so that only the best of the best are kept, and so it doesn't interfere with development. Then in early childhood is when these connections start to really apply to life, and the brain maturity at the hippocampus starts and memories can start forming.